Let's be innovative. Let's challenge the norm. Let's raise the bar. Let's be the elite.
Lionheart returns debuting its new championship format. For the first time, Lionheart's best will battle in a multi-class format featuring BMW's all-new M Hybrid V8 and M4 GT3 machines. 55 drivers will face off in the ultimate test in the ultimate driving machine. 18 races at the world's most demanding road courses where traffic takes on a whole new meaning. This year, Lionheart will crown 2 champions, whose name will be etched into the Lionheart history books. Find out next. The Buttkicker Sportscar Championship, presented by BMW Performance Driving School, starts now. After a trip to America's National Park of Speed, the Buttkicker Sports Car Series makes its way back across the pond to the home of British motorsports. This former airfield may not boast much elevation change, but with track limits expected to be a hot-button topic today, will maximum commitment be rewarded, or will drivers need to tame the urge to push? Welcome to Silverstone, and welcome to the Next Level Racing Grand Prix of Silverstone, presented by Arena TV. Hi folks, delighted to have you alongside once again, here on RaceSpotTV for coverage of the 2023 Buttkicker Sports Car Series. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, delighted as ever to be joined by Andrew Kinsella as we make our way in through this back half of the 2023 campaign. Let's dive straight into our BMW Performance Driving School pre-race show, because Andrew, this is a track that has seen plenty of Lionheart history.
It absolutely has. There's been countless classic races that have happened on this track, and countless classic moments, such as the finish of a certain open wheel race a couple of seasons ago that I might be thinking of, Arjuna.
Yes, that is definitely not what I was thinking about either. And we're hoping that we get somewhat of a similar initial race, the final lap may be ending in a slightly different fashion. Here's a look at the Next Level Racing schedule. Boy, already halfway through the 2023 campaign, and now with classics left to come. Silverstone, Indianapolis, the Nürburgring, Imola, Suzuka, Motegi, Daytona. I mean, Andrew, these are some of those classics, and we'll make our way around the world in this multi-class affair.
You really can't ask for a better schedule to close out an endurance racing season or a sports car racing season than this. You get to go all over the world, and you end up right back at Daytona just before the real world speed weeks, or the real world Roar Before the 24 happens. It'll be excellent cap on this what has been an excellent season so far.
Absolutely, and of course that will be building up to the 2024 iRacing Daytona 24, so the drivers will have plenty of lights when we go under the lights at night to crown a champion. Championship standings in the LMDH brought to you by the BMW Performance Driving School. See just 11 points at the top between John Baderfer and Phil Kraus in the Hydro Race Geodesic and private label Team Hype machines. Austin Young led for a vast majority of the opening races of the season, but Andrew, a couple of contacts through the course of the season see him not just a couple of points further back now than he would have wanted, but also facing down some avoidable contact penalties here today.
Yeah, it's been the third cause of incident penalty for Austin Young here today, so he's going to be starting from the very back of the prototype field, so he's going to have to fight his way up through the grid if he wants to keep the pressure on Phil Kraus and John Baderfer. But you look at those top four, and there really is still everything to play for in this championship. Any one of those four can get hot at any point in time and take hold of this championship.
The margin further back, slightly bigger, but Alex Guillon, Michael O'Brien, David Cyril, Alex Van der Sant. 4 drivers, 5 points. Going to be fun to see how they fight themselves through the course of the rest of the season as well. GT3 standings, they're split up into Pro and Am, where they fight on track together for the same number of points. Classified in the championship separately though. And with Sean Campbell still 100% perfect, the one race that he has not won this season was the one race that he has missed. The margin up towards the front, looking bigger and bigger. But Ryan Otis, Joshua Chin fighting for second, 10 points pitting them, and then Matthew Morhart, Miguel Vigo tied for 4th position. Andrew, it really is one of the strongest GT3 fields that you can find on a Monday night.
It really, really is, and you look at the different driving styles of these drivers as well. Like Otis and Morhart, they're the consistent lap after lap. They're at the finish type of drivers. Chin and Vigo, they're the all-out race and take whatever you can. And then Sean Campbell's kind of the perfect combination of the two, and that's why he's leading that Pro Championship.
Sean Campbell has already been in action today here on RaceSpotTV. If you were watching some of the Precision Racing League coverage, and so doing the double, it's going to be interesting how he adapts. Very different sort of a car, of course, the GT3. HyperX Team Championship, this one, of course, with GT3 split into Pro and Am, combined into the Team Championship. Both seeing dominant runaway leaders. Hydro Race Geodesic Racing in the LMDH, Synergy Motorsports in the GT3, and then some close fights further behind. Second for the LMDH, and realistically 4th on back in the GT3 Championships. Let's talk about the Gomez Sim Industry Series details in this very first year of the Buckkicker Sportscar Series, in the 10th year of the Lionheart Racing Series. Previously, just open wheel focus, but welcoming multi-class racing with the brand new BMW M Hybrid V8 and BMW M4 GT3s for multi-class madness. It's been a lot of fun this season, and the drivers have battled with a custom fix setup built by the Majors Garage, all for their share of $18,000 in cash and prizes. Most significant of which, of course, is the LMDH and GT3 champions driving away with the BMW M4 GT4 experience at the BMW Performance Driving School in Thermal, California. 90-minute timed races, all with live race control, makes for 18 exciting rounds, and today as we land at Silverstone, the arena track analysis sees us continue a bit of an old school vibe, Andrew, with a trip to the former World War II airfield, and I think you and I, we touched on it just before we went live. Track limits, that's going to be the hot button topic here today.
Yes, it absolutely is. It's so easy. You say it's an old school vibe, but I'd say it's almost old school meets the new school, and that's what leads to such temptation to push this car as hard as you can through some of these corners, that the track limits maybe just don't allow you to push that hard. So it's definitely going to be very important to pick your battles and pick when you're pushing your car to the limit. The other thing is, look at that next point there. The pit lane speed is very low, so pit stops, mistakes, or other penalties will be costly.
That is a guarantee as well, that we are probably going to see drivers with the penalties from going off the track one too many times, and therefore it's going to impact them not just in their 20 to 22 lap window for the GTP, 16 to maybe 18 laps for the GT3s, depending on how much fuel saving you are able to do in a 28-second delta estimated with a shorter pit distance. The track layout, as we'll take a look at it right now, actually shows the drivers just at that start-finish line on the left-hand side of your screen. Going to the left, pit entry will be a straight and then shortcutting that final section. But Andrew, let's be honest, the new section that was added with that big wing building, not necessarily the most iconic just yet. It's as you round out of there into the old turn number 1. Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton tangled there a couple of years ago. And then after that, Maggots, Beckett's, Copse. It's a fast, furious section that demands the most from a driver.
Yeah, as I say, it's old school meets new school, and definitely I prefer the old school section of this track. It's just so challenging. And you say Maggots and Beckett's, it's so hard to get that right, and you have to do it lap after lap here. And it's such a challenge as a driver.
Going to be fun to see how they get on again through 90 minutes of racing action. They are out there right now for the qualifying session. There's that new wing building that we were talking about, turn 1, a fast right-hand sweeper uphill slightly and in towards the village section that presents itself as the first heavy braking zone of the racing action. Drivers out there again for that qualifying session. Let's take this time to thank all of those that make this possible, starting with HyperX. The Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperx.com. You're passionate about sim racing, but it always feels a little flat compared to the feeling of driving a real car. Now you can actually feel what it's like to drive a race car. Butt kicker haptic hardware and software are easy to install and let you feel every bump in the track, slip of your tire, and engine redline. The tactile feedback is so accurate and realistic, you'll be driving faster and having more fun than ever before. Visit thebuttkicker.com to learn more. If you think sim racing is thrilling, try getting behind the wheel of a real race car. The BMW M4 GT4 experience at the BMW Performance Driving School in Thermal, California puts you in the cockpit of one of BMW's fastest cars, complete with roll cage and racing slicks. You'll get fitted with a racing suit, practice pit stops, and lap their track with pro instructors. Nothing virtual about these thrills. To book your M4 GT4 experience, call or visit the links on screen. Next Level Racing is an industry-leading cockpit and motion simulator manufacturer devoted to creating the most immersive experience possible for the global sim racing community. Take your racing to the next level and visit nextlevelracing.com. Gomez Sim Industries are makers of high-end esports equipment and controls, precision-built using nothing but the best materials available today. Passion and handmade craftsmanship drive each made-to-order build, creating a driving experience like no other. Visit GomezSimIndustries.com. Arena is an all-new esports streaming experience driven by real-time interactions between gamers and their communities. Arena brings live broadcast fan engagement to the next level. Get involved and make a difference on arena.tv. From simple logos to full branding for your company, virtual designs to liveries raced by Indy 500 champions, Graphics offers the finest quality with a wide range of design services. Visit graphicsesports.com to learn more. Drivers get the track to themselves during qualifying, an important distinction at a track as fast as this, in my opinion, Andrew, because you look at this section up at Stowe, there's one of the key areas where track limits are going to be so important to watch out wide. That little green strip of AstroTurf, so inviting, but slide all 4 tires beyond the white line, you find yourself in trouble.
You really do, and it's very easy for these drivers to just overcook it through there just that little bit and slide that little bit wide. Not only does it invalidate your lap, but as you say, it can lead very quickly to a penalty in the race as well. So the drivers are going to have to be on their toes. They're going to be pushing to the absolute limit, but 1 little millimeter over the limit, and that's all she wrote.
Qualifying here, I don't necessarily think is going to be the most important. I really think managing traffic is going to play such a big part in the story of what we see today. However, it's maybe no surprise that in the GT3s, Sean Campbell switching from the LMP3s, as mentioned, very quickly over into these GT3 machines is on top by half a second as it stands right now. If you look over in the LMDHs, it's much closer between the likes of John Bader for Adam Blocker and Phil Krause. The 3 split by 1/10 of a second. A bigger margin back to Graham Sanders. Not many cars still with times to set, even with 3 minutes left in the session. Here's Bradley Sexton, who makes his debut in this 2023 Butt Kicker Sports Car Series. He's in front currently of Alexander Van der Zandt, who doesn't have a representative time on the board, getting ready for his fourth and final qualifying lap for a driver joining at this point in the series. Andrew, what are we expecting from Bradley Sexton?
I think it'll definitely be a learning curve for Bradley here. It's a tall task to jump in the deep end with the talent level of these drivers. Like even you talk about Van der Zandt, but look at Guyon and Taylor and O'Brien, drivers who have been at the front of Lionheart competition for all of their careers, and then they come in here and they find themselves battling for 5th, 6th, 7th, or 8th. So it's going to be a tall order for him, but I know Bradley's very enthusiastic as a driver, and he's really looking to learn quickly, and he puts in the effort. So if there's someone who can jump in mid-season and start to make a difference sooner rather than later, it's definitely he's a good candidate.
Everyone is technically still rookies in the season, let's not forget, so really interesting to see how a quote-unquote rookie gets on. Now remember, Austin Young not going to set a qualifying time, so it means that Bradley Sexton is not going to start last. Austin Young, the only LMDH currently with no time on the board, and that's Bradley Sexton parking it in qualifying and calling it a day. 90 seconds will have to then bleed off the clock with no drivers rolling around, which is always disappointing. We love to see cars on track. 90 minutes, we know we're going to see 2 pit stops, and the fuel windows, as ever, Andrew, indicate there's a bit of flexibility to what we're going to see with the fuel mileage.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see who likes to go short on this first stint, who's going to push it the longest, and it normally comes down to tires, doesn't it, Arjuna? The tires are so important in both the LMDH and the GT3 field, and I think it's going to be very important here today. The loads through some of these corners are very, very high, especially in that Maggots and Beckett's complex.
I'm kind of wondering, you look at the weather right now, it does look a little bit calm, a little bit British weather, if you will excuse me for saying that. I mean, look at the grey clouds, Andrew. It does look as though iRacing's ready to turn on that rain button.
Well, we are the most realistic simulator in the world for a reason, Arjuna.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, we're not too worried about the weather. You mentioned that we've seen our fair share of drama here, and with 3 drivers at the front of the LMDH field split by, what, again, just over a 1/10 of a second, you can expect it to be quite fun. Draft for the GT3s, I think, is going to mean that Sean Campbell doesn't have to probably do much with a 1/2 second margin in qualifying, Andrew, to break away. Bit of a stark comparison to kind of what we saw at the Red Bull Ring Road America Monza, the last 3 tracks we went racing at.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot harder for the drivers to form that draft train behind Sean Campbell, but you look at the drivers, Otis, Vigo, Chin, and Morhart, they've all been fighting over that second spot, and I think that's really where the battle is going to be for the majority of this race. Very, very close, especially Otis, Vigo, and Chin. Basically a 2/10 of a second between the 3 of them. I think it's going to be a wild battle for that second position, and of course, if something happens to Sean Campbell, we keep saying this, it hasn't really happened yet, but at any point it can.
Well, ready to go then for the Next Level Racing Grand Prix of Silverstone, presented by Arena TV. Let's run you down through today's Butt Kicker starting grid, where John Baderford gets ready to lead us to the green. Alongside Adam Blocker, just over 1/2 a 10th off in the Powerslide Motorsports number 74. Sees Phil Kraus in the very pink and black private label Team Hype number 91 roll from 3rd, alongside with Graham Sanders, who's a little bit further back than he'd like, and will be hoping the race pace is maybe just a little bit quicker. Michael O'Brien and Matt Taylor, the Graphics LC teammates, share row number 3 and find themselves within 3/10 of one another. Alexander Van der Zandt and then Alex Guyon share row 4, with Bradley Sexton on debut inside of Austin Young to roll from the very final row of the 10-car LMDH field. The BMW GT3s are ready to go, and Sean Campbell almost breaks into the 159s but just misses out. As ever though, the 100% pole streak continues. He'll be alongside Ryan Otis with Miguel Vigo and Josh Chin through the rest of the top 4, 7/10 between them. They'll be hoping the draft can hopefully stick them together. Matthew Morant continues to improve in qualifying, now up in 5th and showing that he's going to consistently bring that speed. Andrew Marquez brings the Graphics LC pink and black number 63 inside of the front 3 rows. Chase Wilson, the AM Championship leader, rolls on the inside of an AM line, while Tyler Graff, Chris Staples and Andrew Wood, also making his debut, make up the rest of your top 10. Trevor Malone, Chris Reagan, double dose of AMS on row number 6 in class, with Travis Yeagerliner, Creighton Carter and then Logan Spath making up the rest of the 15-car GT3 field. They get themselves formed up already behind the pace car, and as you see themselves rolling, it's a quick blast to get ready. Let's run you down then through today's featured onboard cameras, and we'll start very quickly with the GT3s. Ryan Otis carries with him the BMW Performance Driving School. Drive on the edge of physics and experience the ultimate rush. Visit BMWPerformanceDrivingCenter.com, while Andrew Marquez carries with him Butt Kicker. Sim racing is better with Butt Kicker. Visit thebuttkicker.com. We'll get some chance to talk about the featured onboard cameras later inside of the LMDH class, but as they work their way into the starting zone, it's here at the home of British Motorsports, where many a dramatic Lionheart moment have already been written into the history books, that another chapter is ready to be written. John Baderfer gets the Next Level Racing Grand Prix of Silverstone underway and fires them up through turn number 1. It's a great start, a clean start for all 10 of the LMDH machines, but onto the brakes for the very first time. Is someone going to get a little bit antsy? Are they going to struggle with the brakes, the regenerative brakes, on the very first time of asking? No, tidally through they seemingly get. The GT3s funneled away up the hill now, Andrew, and a nice tidy start for them too.
It was a tidy start until Alexander Van nearly sent it into turn 3 there and had to get really on the binders. But so far so good in your GT3 field, although they are still going through there 2 and 3 wide in the back of that field as well.
Yeah, they are keeping it tidy though for the most part. That is what we like to see. As I say that though, Adam Blocker has jumped to the very front of the field as
John Baderfer made a mistake there.
Yep, that's what I was wondering. The Hydra Race Geodesic car still on the line, but now back in 4th, and will have to try and cycle his way back on forward. No such luck just yet in the GT3. Sean Campbell still runs, but with the draft still playing its part in towards Cops. LMDHs through Maggots and Beckett's now for the very first time.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of a scruffy lap in the LMDHs, but the GT3s have really calmed down nicely. Ryan Otis has cemented his grasp on second place 4 now, and he's still within draft range, coming through 3/4 of the first lap, so that's a good sign.
Seemingly at the front, though, Adam Blocker and Phil Kraus, who worked together this weekend in the iRacing Bathurst 1000, now on track battling against each other once again. End of the opening lap, it is going to be Blocker and Kraus, then Sanders, that take advantage of the mistake, potentially, from John Baderfer, who is down into 4th position. Check out, though, GT3s cresting up in towards Stowe, and with Sean Campbell still with a rear-view mirror filled of Ryan Otis.
It's been a nice, solid start for Ryan Otis in this race, and this is exactly what I think he was hoping for. If he can stay within drafting range of Sean Campbell for a few laps here, I think it'll really do wonders for his race. And Campbell is definitely known to sort of settle in, and it looks like Vandesen has had another moment. He's letting Michael O'Brien go on the straightaway there.
I think that was actually because Austin Young, who's up 5 positions in the opening lap and a half or so of this race, got past O'Brien and also compromised Vandesen at the same time, and so the number 96 loses touch. Blocker, by the way, does have some technical issues up towards the front. We're hoping they resolve themselves without losing too much more ground, but we'll have to wait and see. Cycle back in time, though, because I don't want to wait too long to see what happened to John Baderfer in that Hydra Race Geodesic car, and it is all by himself, and it's on that run in towards Brooklands before Luffield. I'm wondering if it's all about the brakes, Andrew.
I was going to say, you were talking about regenerative braking on these cars, and I think that's exactly what happened here. He just gets in a little too deep, gets on the brakes a little too hard, and he just can't get the car slowed down enough. Locks the rears just a little bit, and then he has to gather it back up, and it costs him 3 positions.
That's an interesting one, though, because usually when we see the rear snap, it's a little bit more of a instant, sort of a click of the fingers, but fortunately, it was a little bit lazier, and he didn't cook up the tires as much as he could have.
Yeah, I think he was just carrying that little bit too much speed, so he was riding the brakes just that little bit too much, caused the weight to shift forward and the rear to rotate around on him.
Well, you can see how dark it looks. What does that mean in terms of weather? Not much. Still 37 degrees on the track with a mostly cloudy conditions. It will probably cool down after the opening hour of the race, but this first hour definitely going to be quite intense, going to be quite warm once we get into the first cycles of traffic. And if you're wondering how separated the field is, well, LMDH is the very left side of the track map, the GT3s at the very right-hand side. We've probably got to go a good 5, 6, 7 laps before traffic's a consideration, Andrew.
Yes, unfortunately for the LMDHs, it's a little bit of a smaller GT3 field for them to negotiate through today, and I think that's a good thing around here because there are large sections of this track that'll be very difficult for the LMDHs to get through the GT3 traffic, particularly this Maggots and Beckett's complex here.
Oh, yes, and there was some discussion going on. Alexander Van der Sant wanted to know which side of the track would GT3s want to exit, and so he could know when to spool up the hybrid and kind of shoot. That's the communication that you like to see with the faster class, understanding what the slower class is going to do, and we'll see if that pays itself out in dividends moving later into this race. Gonna quickly come to the end of the third lap. Still the top four, only split by 1.7 odd seconds, and Austin Young started from the back, is only 2 seconds further back, Andrew.
Yeah, I'm surprised that Young hasn't been able to quite hold on to the back of his teammates here. It looks like he's just pushing maybe a little bit too hard at this point. I think he just needs to get into a little bit of a rhythm now that he's past Van der Sant and O'Brien, but certainly he doesn't want to get too far behind the leading four here if he wants to really mount a charge for the top half of the grid here.
So the graphics lack of best lap time, by the way, shows that Austin Young on the previous 3 laps of this race has not set a valid lap time just yet. That is how much the Hydro Race Geodesic Racing number 11 is pushing out there. Still a ways to go, though, in this race. We'll have to make sure those track limit violations don't start to accrue and add on up. Not totally broken the draft at the front, but Sean Campbell has all but done it. Ryan Otis now is the draft train, a caravan leader for Miguel Vigo and Josh Chin. Matthew Morhart just about trying to hold on to them as well, but Sean Campbell shows that LMP3, GT3, they might as well be the same thing.
Absolutely. We already knew this about Campbell, that he can drive pretty much anything that he sets his mind to, and drive it at a very top level. Because these drivers behind him are no slouch either. You look at the likes of Chin, Otis, and Vigo, very accomplished iRacing drivers in their own rights, and Campbell can just walk away from them seemingly race after race. It really goes to show the level of a driver that Campbell is.
And so again, just remember, next season, Sean Campbell's going to be scored relative to the LMDHs, even though he's going to compete in a GT3 car. I think that's what we've decided. It's almost
I think that's fair.
It is fair. I'm telling you, it is the fairest thing to do. It's almost 2 seconds at the front, which means bye-bye draft, bye-bye Sean Campbell. With not even 10 minutes done in this race, it's going to take traffic potentially to bring that back into play. Josh Chin, I actually think, is in a quite interesting place, because we know that Chin is one that has liked to short fill in the early stints of the race often, and it's not always benefited him. Is this a case where it might actually benefit him, save a lot of fuel right now, do a bit of a short fill, and then continue to be able to save some, I don't want to say fuel in the middle stints of the race, I want to say fuel time in the end pit stop of the race, Andrew?
Well, I think the bigger story for Chin is that he's finally back in a purple car, Arjuna.
Oh, I was trying not to comment on it, because you know he'll be back in a red car just because we talked about it now.
That is very true, but it does seem like the red car has not been good on the purple strategy, or on the pit strategy. So maybe the purple car will finally allow him to be on the right strategy for once. There
is a joke somewhere in there about team talent and pit lane, but I will refrain and hope that I don't get any messages from Jason Brophy in the next couple of minutes. Up across the line, and you can see 2.3 that gap, even though second, third, and fourth run almost bumper to bumper, with then a further gap back to Matthew Morhart. Going to be all about the pressure that Ryan Otis is feeling. Similar sort of pressure that maybe Adam Blocker might be under right now. Blocker was not necessarily feeling the most comfortable with the setup before the race today, but clearly has been able to figure out it decently. And again, remember, the top three, Beta, Blocker, and Kraus, split by just over 1/10 of a second.
And I really do think that there's not a lot to be had between the drivers with this setup. As we see Blocker and Kraus getting very, very close to each other as they're coming up just in time for them to be catching the GT3 field here. So this is a very interesting time for Kraus to be putting that much pressure under Blocker and Blocker making mistakes. But yeah, I just think that the way this car is handling Arjuna is it's not allowing any of the drivers to really, truly reach the maximum potential of the car lap to lap, and it's giving them all a little bit of an uncertainty and causing them to be really, really close together on time. As that was an interesting choice from Blocker there.
Well, to be fair, probably the outside's the better choice. Fortunately, no such drama through Cops. The aerial shot that the chopper's giving us right now going to be wonderful. In towards Backes, and Beckett's here. Adam Blocker has to check up for a moment. Phil Kraus going to commit and slide on through as well. This is the desperation. Blocker out wide. Now watch the hybrid from Kraus. Spools it up, and they'll be 3 wide for a moment potentially. Blocker will cover the inside.
Blocker's going to use the GT3 car as a pick. Kraus is just going to try and, split the gap there. They go side by side, and how do they not touch there?
That was Andrew Wood, teammate to Phil Kraus. It helps when you can trust the other drivers. Blocker has to back out of it, concede the ground as they slide their way through. Kraus will take the lead as we come to the end of the 6th lap of racing. We know the traffic's always contentious. The Hydra Ace Geodesic Racing pair are on their case as well.
It looked for a little bit like the two Hydra Race Geodesic Racing team drivers had lost out in the traffic, but then all that battling happened and suddenly they're right back into it. Line astern with Kraus and Blocker gets into the car of Trevor Malone there a little bit.
And for a moment, Beta tried to get past Graham Sanders. They almost made contact and both lost out as a result. Phil Kraus scampers away though as they pass Andrew Marquez and now have a bit of a gap before they'll encounter the top 4 in the GT3 field. The slightly smaller numbers that we have today as well, Andrew, means the cycles of traffic going to be a little bit intense than they might have been at the start of the campaign.
I definitely think they are, especially with how close both of these fields are. There's large pockets of drivers that are basically going the same time, so everything is going to be very, very intense. Everything's compacted right together, so it's going to be very difficult to negotiate this traffic effectively for all of these drivers.
Fortunately, I think we'll get through safely. Ryan Otis must have had his heart in his mouth there as Adam Blocker almost made contact with the right rear quarter panel. 1.6 seconds the margin now, though, to Phil Kraus, who is scampered away up towards the front. Oh, goodness gracious me. This is some fun stuff, and Phil Kraus has taken advantage, and now with clean air, we'll hope that his tires have got plenty of life still to give.
I think this is the best case scenario right now for Phil Kraus, is he's gotten a gap over Blocker. He's broken the draft essentially, and now maybe there were some questions early on whether Kraus was the faster out of the two of them over the first portion of this race. Oh, Michael O'Brien's made a little bit of a mistake there.
I'm not sure what's happened to the Graphics LC car, but might have checked up just in front of a bit of a battle. Chase Wilson, let's not forget the AM leader in qualifying, gets passed, I think that is, by, oh no, in fact, excuse me, other way around, might have been passing Tyler Graf there. There's a couple of cars that have defaulted to standard liveries for today because of a change and an update to the iRacing paint, so if you don't recognize some of the cars, that is why. But Chase Wilson still leads the AM class and runs in 7th, Andrew, very important. AMs and pros scored together out on track.
Yes, and Wilson is definitely looking to put a stranglehold on that AM championship because, of course, he also has a drive on the line in with the BMW Performance Driving School, so he's definitely looking to get that sealed up as soon as he possibly can.
He took a bit of a sabbatical, you would say, in the mid part of the season. Back now on track and hoping to continue to show the speed that saw us, saying that he is likely to be up in the pros potentially for 2024. Once again, traffic cycles its way out past Miguel Vigo and Ryan Otis. This train now 4 seconds back from Sean Campbell, who has taken advantage of being P1 and being by himself with the leader cycling on through to not lose as much ground. Here's what happened to O'Brien alongside with one of the Synergy cars, and there's the snap of the brakes that we were talking about.
Yeah, and you can see just how difficult this car is under braking. Basically no warning for O'Brien. He is just, I think, concentrating on getting around. I believe that was Matthew Morehart, and he just gets in a little bit too deep, realizes he is in too deep, hits the brakes just that little bit harder, and suddenly the rears lock, and he has to have a heart and mouth moment and catch the car and lose 2 positions in the process.
He does a good job of avoiding the sausage curb just on the inside of the final corner there. But yeah, time was really lost, and the damage to the car would have been extra damage. The twisting of the knife. 3 almost full seconds between Phil Kraus and Adam Blocker up towards the front, and 2.2 back to Austin Young behind these 3 cars. So Young has not lost ground to the podium inside of that traffic sequence, lost ground to the race leader overall, let's not forget, after starting from the back and being forced to do so after a penalty. It's why, Andrew, it pays, it's a benefit to stay out of race control.
It absolutely is a benefit, but I do think that the driver who's probably the most frustrated out of this top 5 right now has got to be John Betafor, your pole sitter, knowing that he has the speed, but I think he's just content right now to stay behind his teammate Graham Sanders. Sanders is just fast enough to stay in front, where Betafor doesn't really have the ability to get by him, but at the same time, you have to believe that Betafor, of these 3 drivers chasing Phil Kraus, probably has the most speed out of the 3 of them.
I wonder if this is about setting up for the next part of the race. With 22 odd laps projected as the fuel window for these cars, we have just crossed over 9 laps complete, worked onto the 10th lap. That means that we could expect these drivers to go as far as maybe 5 minutes beyond 60 minutes left in this race. Opens up potential fuel windows after that. How are these drivers thinking? Of course, this car had a slight couple of changes in the most recent iRacing build. Not too many, fortunately, but it's one of those things where drivers are always questioning, has something changed that has meant that I've got to update my driving style, or work on it a little bit, or do I just keep doing what I've been doing it before? One benefit is, Andrew, they don't have to worry about the setups in this competition.
Yeah, but of course that does mean that their style almost has to be adaptable to the setup as well. So it's one of those situations where you don't have to worry about one thing, but that just means all your focus goes on to something else. So it's always a trade-off, and if you're a racer and a driver, then you're always going to be looking for whatever advantage you can get, whether it's adapting your style or finding the edge in a setup.
You can see on the left side of the screen some of the lap times for the drivers. Sean Campbell's 4/10 quicker than Ryan Otis. Phil Kraus was 3 and a bit tenths quicker than Adam Blocker behind, and you can see the pressure starting to build. The blue and black weaves to the left. Sanders almost half fakes to the inside as they rise up towards Stowe. Corner falls away from you. That's why the track limits there are such a interesting thing. And with Blocker defending the inside, it's brave of Sanders to try and look the long way around, but it's just building the pressure, it's mounting, and as they continue to bleed time, Betafor all over the back of his teammate, Adam Blocker is starting to look very, very worried.
Yeah, and the problem with all of this defensive driving from Blocker is that it's costing them bucket loads of time at this point. They're now almost 5 seconds behind Kraus, so the more that Blocker drives defensively, the more that these 2 Geodesic Racing Team drivers are going to try and get by him, and we've seen a change of position here. Now it's Betafor attacking Blocker. I think Betafor might just have a little bit extra speed compared to Sanders, and so I think this might just open the door for both of them.
Fuel-saving tires in the meantime, shows the nose in towards what was the old final couple of corners. Now it leads to the old pit building. Wrap your way out through Luffield, back onto the power. Blocker has seemingly lost the tires. You can see the car wiggling underneath him. Is this where the discomfort was building for him when he was mentioning not maybe feeling confident? Betafor looking the long way around will lose him time on the run into Maggers and Beckett, but maybe a net win. Now more chance, Andrew, to build up the speed on the exit of the corner.
It's all about the exit of Maggots and Beckett's here so that they can get the run down into Stowe. That is the longest straightaway really on this track. And the problem is that there's no real braking zone at the end. Look at Blocker weaving down back and forth, trying to break the draft. Betafer's going around the outside here, Arjuna.
I think Blocker had a bad run out of Beckett's and Copse, and now with contact, Betafer spins Blocker around. He'll hopefully not run into the wall. Hard to tell from the camera shot, stricken in the grass. Blocker out to 5th position, but fortunately with no damage on the car.
Blocker rejoins in front of his teammate Alexander Van de Sande, but he's going to be very, very disappointed about how that went down. I think that Blocker, we were remarking on the wheel spin before, and I think it just came back to bite him again. He's definitely lost the rear tires, and he seemed to just get off that corner really, really slowly. Betafer had a run on him, but I don't think that he was expecting Adam to just really not accelerate there.
Yeah, Adam just didn't have the grip there. John had so much more confidence. And unfortunately, 2 does not go into 1. John Betafer will now see a 7-second gap up to Phil Krause, who might just have been gifted this win, not by the contact, but by the amount of battling that we were seeing and the time that had already cost a second on back, Andrew.
Yeah, it's going to be a big ask for Betafer, Sanders, and Young to get back into contact with Phil Krause. Krause has been looking not just fast, but really consistent as well. Where Blocker was maybe losing the tires and making a few mistakes here and there, Krause, we've seen none of that from him so far. So it'll be really telling, I think, in the next few laps. If Betafer and Sanders can slowly get it back to maybe within 5 seconds before the pit stop, then I'll say they've got a chance. But other than that, they've got to turn something really special with strategy or pull something out of their I think we've just got something from race control here, Arjuna.
Yeah, John Betafer, I think, is going to be getting a drive-through penalty for that. We'll get confirmation in a few moments' time, but I was just going to say there's live race control, folks. Don't worry, they will be taking a look at it. And around this 90-minute race, a drive-through penalty, about 30-plus seconds, is going to cost you severely. Traffic's going to once again be a factor, though. Phil Krause is finding that out once again. Our race leader's got enough of a margin now to settle into the rhythm and hope that things are going to continue to go his way. Confirmation comes, by the way, from race control, Andrew. Drive-through penalty for the 67.
And I can understand why that happens. I know that John will probably be really frustrated with that call, but at the same time, John, he did run straight into the back of Adam Blocker, and if there's one thing that you can't do in terms of avoidable contact, it's run into the back of the guy that you're racing with.
I wonder how Adam Blocker had managed to burn that much off his tires that quickly. Now, Phil Krause, what's going on at the front? Why is that margin down to under 4 seconds? Phil Krause is going very, very slowly right now. I think potentially he might have gotten a slowdown penalty that he was having trouble clearing, Arjuna. So where would this have come, though?
I think it was coming out of the old final corner.
So we did see very quickly him run out wide. We'll pick that up once again. It's on the outside of his teammate Andrew. It's 4 tires off the track. And you know how when I was talking in the battle for the lead about how Andrew would teammate of Phil Krause, it would be a benefit? Apparently it wasn't there.
And I don't think that Krause quite realized that that would be a penalty. Otherwise, he might have backed off and chosen a bit of a different tactic there. Ooh, that's very interesting. Not only is Betafer serving his penalty, but Alexander Van de Sande is in the pits as well.
Not sure if this is a scheduled stop, although given what I was mentioning earlier with drivers being able to go on fuel for longer than 30 minutes, it could be a viable strategy. Betafer is going to come out in front of Matt Taylor, so the drive-through penalty delta ends up being closer to 16, 17 seconds, and Betafer still holds on to position inside of the top 5.
And interestingly enough, puts him about 2 seconds right behind Adam Blocker.
Oh, interesting. So those two will probably come together pretty quickly. There's 14 laps done in this race or so. Fuel window's 22. Adam Blocker's still got plenty of struggle left on those tires.
Yes, he absolutely does. And if you're wondering why, just to cap off the John Badafer point, if you're wondering why he didn't seem to lose that much time there, Arjuna, it's because the pit lane here, you basically get to shortcut that final chicane. So he was able to push right to the commitment line, and that was able to gain him a significant amount of time back. So even though it's a 28-second pit lane, because of that chicane after Stowe, that's what happened with Badafer. But yeah, Blocker definitely needs to get the tires back under him quickly, or else he's going to find himself right back in the clutches of Badafer.
That is something that we discussed in our arena track analysis, and is borne out, case in point right there. We talked about our GT3 featured onboard cameras today. It's quickly time to talk about today's LMDH driver onboard cameras as we hear the roar of the BMW M Hybrid V8, which has of course just come off its trip to Indianapolis to the Brickyard, which is where we head next. We ride on board with Austin Young, who has worked his way on forward through the field up into a podium spot, carrying with him Arena, a new streaming experience for esports is coming. Get involved and make a difference on arena.tv. He's not the only Hydra Race geodesic racing driver to carry an onboard camera. It's now also the chance for John Badafer to cycle on forward. He's meant to be carrying with HyperX. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers, and HyperX is always ready to game. It's part 2. It's Blocker versus Badafer once more. Blocker holds on for now.
Yeah, but Badafer's anxious to get by quickly. Blocker's not giving him much room on the outside there, but Badafer's still going to go for the over-under move, and we might have a move coming down into Copse here.
Oh, look how defensive Blocker goes, almost all the way to the pit wall. Badafer around the outside. Blocker is able to make his way onto the apex and leave just enough racing room for the number 67. And with traffic going to play a part once again, will they go either side of the traffic?
Whoa.
Badafer goes bold and clears himself on Blocker, who runs into Matthew Morhart, and then the two tangle. Blocker in drama at Silverstone once again.
Well, unfortunately, I think that's going to be a drive-through penalty for Blocker there. He just got in way over his head. I think he saw a little bit of red watching John Badafer get around. Not only does he get into Badafer, but he also got into, I believe that was Matthew Morhart as well.
It was looking like a very good day for the 62, who had been able to claw back up the gap almost to the 3 that he was chasing down. You see the initial bit of contact, and then from there, Blocker, Badafer, part 2. Similar sort of an end.
Similar end, but Blocker came out on the worst end for sure, but definitely I think that was definitely not the best choice for Adam Blocker there.
Interesting. Adam Blocker is done for the day. He'll be finishing outside of the points, you'd think, with less than 30 minutes complete in this race. John Badafer still has to try and struggle on forward. Check in with Matthew Morhart, who somehow, despite taking a real bollock to the back of the car and losing the bumper, is still out there and running, Andrew. Incredible.
Yeah, and this is actually something that we haven't talked about. With the new season update, the GT3s have gotten an entirely new damage model, or at least an entirely updated damage model, and part of it is more aerodynamic damage, and so it'll be interesting to see how Matthew Morhart gets along here experiencing this damage for the first time.
That's not damage that you necessarily practice either. So
no.
Yes, I was just trying to think of a situation where how you could simulate this level of damage, and I've come up short. Come up with nothing. Sean Campbell, now almost 10 seconds clear of Ryan Otis, Miguel Vigo, Josh Chin, who are still locked in this choo-choo train that's almost like it's running its way in towards King Cross Station. The way that these 3 drivers, Andrew, have been able to stay this close, remarkable, even with the traffic.
It really has been, but we've seen them really close together all year long, so it doesn't necessarily surprise me either, as they're getting just a little bit separated by the prototype traffic now, but they'll quickly close up again, I'm sure.
out through the final corner once again. This is where the drivers started the race, and fortunately for the GT3s, got relatively single file pretty quickly. It was a less a bunched up start than it felt like it was for the LMDHs. Onto the brakes once again, and just look how Vigo will close. And with these drivers now clear of the traffic once more, they can settle into the rhythms. Phil Kraus definitely, after serving the slowdown, has got him back to the consistent ways. His last lap was a 1:43.988. It's only 2/10, Andrew, off his fastest lap of the race.
Yeah, I was saying this off the top. Kraus has shown the consistency and the speed, so he's going to be very, very difficult to catch. And Graham Sanders is just slowly, lap by lap, losing a tenth here, 2/10 there, 3/10 there. So it's going to be very, very difficult for anyone to catch Kraus, barring a mistake at this point.
There are now 30 minutes complete, and so I think with that, almost 30 minutes complete, I should say. I think the pit window is going to open for drivers. Bradley Sexton on debut, past Matt Taylor. He's gained 3 positions so far. Not a bad start to the career. Might be on for a top 5 finish here, Andrew.
Yeah, I definitely think that Bradley Sexton has the right approach here, Arjuna. He's just been quietly and consistently putting in the laps and picking up positions where he can. Right now, we've got a couple of drivers on pit lane, it looks like. Matt Taylor being one for sure here.
So Matt Taylor peels off to the lane, followed by Alex Guyon. Of course, we saw Alexander Van der Sant have the slightly early pit stop of his own in the GT3 class, excuse me. I think we are going to see pit stops, and indeed it comes, but it comes again with Joshua Chin going for the different pit call after sitting in line and saving that fuel. And the king of chins brings the 73 to the lane.
He always seems to do this, Arjuna, where he goes into the pit lane first, and it never seems to work out for him. So I don't know why he keeps on trying this strategy.
Yeah, I don't have a good answer for you, to be honest, Andrew. Hopefully this time it comes good. This is the day, right?
I mean, what is it? A stop clock is right twice a day?
Yes, yeah, exactly. A broken clock is right twice a day. I was trying to come up with something that was, yeah, maybe even harsher than that. But we'll see. It could be for Josh Chin. If he thinks he's faster than the 2:01.7 that Ryan Otis did last time by. Okay, I just noticed the lap time. Sean Campbell did a 2:0.03. 1.4 seconds faster. Is that why Josh Chin has maybe tried to do something different? We'll see, as he's come out in some clean air and now has the pressure on to push.
I mean, it could be, but the question is like, is it really that hard for the GT3s to pass here that he wasn't able to get around Otis and Vigo? Like, it just seems like it's a strange way to try and get this track position, because it always comes back to bite him at the end on the second stint in the second pit stop. But we got Betafer in down pit lane for the second time, but the first time where he's actually going to take service here, Arjuna.
So 4 tires would seemingly go onto that car as Betafer goes up on the air jacks. Sexton slides in behind. And now Matt Taylor, Alex Guyon, Alexander Van der Sant will all be joined by other cars who have made pit stops. Van der Sant had come out in front of the other 2 takers to the lane. John Betafer is going to drop and roll now. And in fact, no, it's a longer stop for Betafer. It's 32.3 seconds, so almost 7 full seconds longer than Alexander Van der Sant. A bit of a different strategy, it would seem.
Well, keep in mind that Van der Sant, with these fixed setups, everyone starts on full fuel load, right, Arjuna? So Van der Sant, by going basically 10 minutes less than Betafer did, Van der Sant had to take on much, much less fuel in order to fill the tank.
It's John Betafer. 4 minutes almost past the top of the hour. We'll try and bring those tires up to temperature. Matt Taylor, Bradley Sexton will swap those positions back around as Sexton brings his tires back into a window with the cloud cover looming once again. Austin Young brings the 11 into pit lane, and from a podium spot after starting at the back of the field.
It's been a nice, strong run for Austin Young. I don't think he quite has the overall pace to get up to Sanders and Kraus, certainly not at this point. But it was exactly what he needed to do from the back of the field. He made it through lap 1 unscathed and was able to just use the attrition that naturally happens in these races and has kept the car on the blacktop, which is more than we can say for some of these other drivers.
Yeah, it has been interesting, hasn't it? Last lap time for Otis was 2:01.2. We didn't get a representative lap time, of course, for Josh Chin after the trip down pit lane, but we will hopefully get a better sense this time by. You can see the Synergy Motorsports and Hydro Race Geodesic Racing pair rising up in towards Stowe, one of the few places where there is a little bit of elevation change at this former British airfield, which of course divides opinions, I feel, in some ways, Andrew. You mentioned it has a touch of the new, a touch of the old as well. These two drivers go on to the 18th lap by the way of the stint. Sean Campbell has come down to pit lane. But I do feel like not everyone loves this revered racing institution.
It certainly does have some of its detractors, but at the same time, you respect the history. I will say I do like the older layout.
Yes.
The old school layout more than the modern layout. I think that the Herman Tilke hairpin treatment hasn't necessarily made the racing as that much better that it was worth destroying the old school feel that the old race had, but I mean, you can definitely fit more spectators in here, and that's what pays the bills these days, isn't it?
Exactly. And of course, the new pit wing that they have is pretty cool, I've heard. Still got some of those classic facilities over here by the old final corner, the British BRDC. Clubhouse is still parked there, where all the fancy people go and sit. I say fancy people, I mean fancy drivers, not celebrities. That is a much more exclusive club. Here's the GTP LMDH drivers. Graham Sanders off the jacks, 27 seconds and counting on the stop, and rolls away. Where's his teammate Austin Young going to be in the mix? Not yet out of the first corner and in towards Village, but there comes the 11. It's a lot closer, and Young's got the tires, let's not forget, a little bit warmer.
Yeah, I definitely think that there is some fairly significant tire drag at the end of this stint. Certainly Austin Young has been able to fire up his tires and gain some time over the course of that pit cycle on his teammate Sanders there, and that puts him squarely within Sanders' draft. So I definitely think that if he was struggling for pace on that first stint without the draft will definitely help him get up onto the back end of his teammate here.
David Sirois jumps into the YouTube chat to say sorry for missing the race. He accidentally fell asleep on the couch. It happens. David has still plenty of races this season to go. And Miguel Vigo has gone on to a 19th lap of the fuel window. Ryan Otis and Phil Kraus bringing in from the leads of their respective classes. But this is a remarkable strategy call from Miguel Vigo in that number 66. And as Ryan Otis makes his way into a rather odd parking spot for the pit stop, it's now the crew against the private label team hype as Joshua Chin heads off to the final corner.
And I definitely think that it goes to show you just how much Miguel Vigo was saving, sat right behind Ryan Otis for the entirety of that stint. Right now, though, Otis is out and away, and it looks like he might just come out in front of Josh Chin here.
But again, it's going to be Josh Chin that's already back up into the racing rhythm and right back onto the chase. And this is where I did speculate that maybe for Chin, it's a great place to be able to save some fuel in the first stint. Now save a little bit more, and the final stints where maybe we'll see the ultimate undercut come, or the ultimate strategy call come. 21 seconds for Ryan Otis, 21 seconds for Josh Chin. Just 0.4 of a second difference in the box between the two. Joshua Chin last time by did do a 2:00.895. Miguel Vigo did a 2:01.634. My expectation here, Andrew, is Miguel Vigo comes out at the back of this train.
I definitely think that that's a possibility, but it'll really depend on what his pit stop looks like. It looks like Otis may have short-filled just a little bit along with Chin, so Miguel Vigo, he likes to go long on these things and have the shortest possible final stint. So I think that might be his MO here as well. And so we'll see if he brims the tank fully here.
Here he comes, 66, the black and gold Hydro Race geodesic racing car. Slides into the lane, shortcuts. What is that final left and then double right? And as Otis and Chin are on their way down the hangar straight, building up with the Hydro Race geodesic LMDH pair behind them, it's as Vigo hits the marks. 22 seconds or so. That's the number we're looking for out of the 66. Josh Chin hasn't really closed on Ryan Otis, I would say either, so Ryan Otis has got him back up to speed pretty quickly. Vigo not off and away just yet. He's got a shorter distance to the end of the pit lane, but you'd have to say that margin not going to be on his side.
No, definitely not. Looks like he had a 25.5 second pit stop. So again, I think he brimmed the tank fully there, and he's going to go as long as possible, probably even as short as maybe a 12 or 15 minute stint at the end here.
And so it is a 3-second gap, no draft for for Miguel Vigo over to Josh Chin, but it is a 3-second difference, 4-second difference in terms of the actual amount of fuel put into the car. So is it a net win for Vigo if the lap time difference is not going to be too much with the amount of fuel that they have loaded into the car? One pit stop done, one more to go. Let's not forget, in this 90-minute race with a limited fuel capacity, it's not too many battles going out on track. Let's go back and cycle. It's a GT3 Pro versus GT3 Am Andrew, where it's Andrew Marquez in front of Chase Wilson.
And Marquez has been showing some really good improvements here as geodesic racing team GTP just slid in between the two of them there. But yeah, Marquez has been showing some really marked improvements, not just in this series, but also in the open wheel series as well. He's been putting in some very solid runs here. So good to see him having a nice run in the top 6 here. And Chase Wilson has got him under a lot of pressure, though.
This is kind of what we have come to expect out of Chase Wilson, the ability to qualify inside of the top 10, and often on race pace is not too far away from the leaders, as that is Matthew Morhart, who I think something's not right. Something is very wrong with that car. He's back up to speed now, but he's lost 5 seconds on this lap alone, and not coming to pit lane, but still not up to racing speed, I feel.
I think he's just trying to limp the car home as best he can at this point. He saw the battle coming up behind him and is just sort of trying to get out of people's way and have whatever finish he can at this point with his damaged race car.
I was almost wondering if, much like we saw from Phil Krause earlier, if there was a slowdown or something. Let's go back in time and find out. Replay machine sees it all, and I don't like that there's an LMDH car alongside a GT3, but through the corner. Oh! No multi-class intervention there. It's just rear tires asking too much of them and losing a bunch of time then up the hangar straight.
And of course, it'll take some time for those rear temps to come down as well, so the car's going to be a handful for the next few laps, and that's all a result of having less downforce on the rear thanks to that rear damage that he got in the Adam Blocker incident.
There is something in the air in Silverstone, isn't there? Every time the Lionheart Racing Series comes here, there is drama. We are here at the home of British Motorsports for the Next Level Racing Grand Prix of Silverstone, presented by Arena TV. Almost halfway through, it's Phil Krause, it's Sean Campbell that leads, but the run to the checkered flag still yet to come on RaceSpotTV. Welcome back to RaceSpotTV and to the home of British motorsports. We're in the back half of the 2023 Butt Kicker Sports Car Series and racing for the Next Level Racing Grand Prix of Silverstone, presented by Arena TV. Hi folks, Arjuna Kankipati alongside with Andrew Kinsella for what has been a dramatic race already so far, and still with 44 minutes left to go. Two classes of competition, of course, out there on the track and racing. It's Phil Krause that leads in the prototypes. It's Sean Campbell that continues to look to extend the 100% streak in the GT3s. But Andrew, 13 seconds that Phil Krause has towards the front. Let's not forget, 3 cars were split by just over a tenth of a second in this qualifying session.
It's one of the most dominating drives we've seen from an LMDH car this year, and it's really a surprise, as you say, that it's happened here with how close the qualifying was. But Phil Krause has just found a rhythm here in this race that he wasn't able to find in qualifying, and it's just put all the rest of the competition in the dust.
You say dust, but Graham Sanders, Austin Young, picking up for the Hydra Race Geodesic Racing team, have at least managed to keep themselves in podium spots, and of course in Austin Young's case, coming from the very back of the field after being forced after a couple more, too many contacts to start from the very back. 7 positions gained for him. Like 2 seconds off of the teammate. And of course, with Graham Sanders being the furthest back of the Hydra Race contingent in the Drivers' Championship, there's going to come a point in the season where, even though mathematically Sanders can win the championship, if Krause is still being a troublemaker, if you will, Andrew, maybe Austin Young, John Baderfer, I'm not saying team orders, but maybe just need to ask Graham to give them a little bit of help.
You could say that, but I don't think that we're anywhere close to that point in the championship just yet, especially if your lead driver in John Baderfer is as far down as he is in this race. I think that what's going to happen is that exactly what's been happening is Sanders got off to a little bit of a slow start to the year, and he's been just slowly, steadily gaining ground throughout the course of this championship. And I think he's going to be right around there in championship hunt right up until the last couple of races. So I don't think we'll see any team orders, at least until we get towards maybe the final month of the year in December.
Hey, again, don't mean team orders. I just mean that imagine if Graham Sanders was right now battling with Phil Krause and holding him up. Remember what Sergio Perez did in 2021? That's all I'm saying. Team orders don't have to be how you help your teammates win a championship. And you say too early in the season to be talking about that. I say only 6 races left after this, and with drop rounds factoring into the mix, you're running out of time to make a bit of a statement. So I feel like we are already probably seeing that the final 4 in the we're down to the final 4 in the championship for the prototypes. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes from there. Here is a moment, by the way, for Andrew Wood, one of the recent additions to the series. Oh, but sliding through Maggots and Beckett's in that Precision Racing esports car. That's not the right direction.
No, it's not. And unfortunately, it just it can happen with these GT3s. You get in a little too deep. He probably had to hit the brake to avoid the car in front of him just a little bit, and when you do that, it shifts the weight forward, and the GT3s are so sensitive to that weight shift, and it just spun him right around.
Spun him right around, and then into a bit of a fight with, that's Creighton Carter behind, so Wood outside of the top 10. But with a longer pit stop in the first sequence compared to some of the other drivers in the field, there is the chance for potentially a bit of an undercut in the second sequence. Here's on the left side those pit stop times. You can see a bit of a agreement in the top 3 for LMDH, around 29 odd seconds, while for the GT3s, top 3 all around 22 seconds. Miguel Vigo, as Andrew mentioned earlier, 25.5, the odd longer stop at the front of that class. We'll see how it plays out. Still probably 20 minutes to go before we actually get to find out how the window's going to play out. It's time to talk about the Elite West Racing number 19 and today's BMW Performance Driving School driver profile. It's Chris Reagan, someone that we have become very familiar with in the Lionheart Retro Series with 66 starts and 27 top 10s. 12 top fives in the mix as well. Came so close at Pocono in Season 5 to a victory, but ultimately, Andrew, someone that I always think about as someone that can go really fast on two wheels in the real world as well.
Absolutely, and he's doing a nice job here today as well, Arjuna. Solid 10th place right now, 4th in class in the AM class. So definitely a nice solid run for Chris Reagan. And as you say, he's done so much in the Retro Series, nearly had that win at Pocono, but he's definitely a driver that puts his all into every single race, and he basically just continues to get better and better every season in the Lionheart series.
Runs in that Elite West Racing camp with Richie Hearn in the Retro Series, of course, so it's always a fun time seeing those drivers out there and racing around the track. Did see, by the way, that Chase Wilson has gotten in front of Andrew Marquez, now runs top 5 in the combined GT3 classifications. These are, again, some very handy championship points that will go in the direction of the number 13. In terms of the rest of the AMs, none of them have been able to be as consistent up in the mix as we've seen from Wilson. John Baderford's recovery drive continues after the long pit stop after the drive-through penalty, so 2 trips down pit lane. Now trying to get past Michael O'Brien for 5th position.
And I would expect Baderford to get by O'Brien sooner rather than later here. I do think that Baderford might have had just a little bit of damage that he had to get repaired on that stop, would have contributed to just how long the car was stationary for there. But it'll be interesting to see how he works the strategy to maybe get himself back up into a top 4 position here, because we did mention this. He is right in the middle of that championship hunt, and I believe is currently leading the championship, so he can't afford to drop too many points to, I believe, the 2nd place driver is Phil Kraus.
No, definitely not. Drop rounds, like mentioned, not something you want to rely on too much through the course of the season, and so that's why for Baderford every point will matter. And O'Brien, Van der Sant, those are realistic targets, but outside of making it a Hydro Race Geodesic 2, 3, and 4, don't necessarily think there's going to be too much more that number 67 can target through the course of the race, past the traffic, and now once again we'll head off into trying to make a bit of an impression on the driver up the road. Josh Chin's trying to make an impression on Ryan Otis, but the thing that impresses me after going, again, 4 seconds longer in the pit box itself, Miguel Vigo is only 2.5 seconds off the back of the private label Team Hype number 73.
And that's so important to make Miguel Vigo's strategy work, is not only did he come out this close, but he's been able to stay this close on presumably a heavier fuel load, so it's going to allow him to go that much deeper, have that much shorter of a stop on this final stint. So I think that Miguel Vigo is looking at a 2nd place finish, barring any mistakes happening in this final 35 minutes or so.
First couple of rounds of the season did not go well for Miguel Vigo, I think that is fair to say, and so definitely on the back foot in the championship. But if consistent 2nd place finishes, finishing in front of Otis and Chin, can present itself in this back half of the campaign, then maybe it's not too late for Vigo to take advantage of drop rounds early in the season and still make a bit of a run for that 2nd place spot. We are seeing Josh Chin get closer and closer. Not close enough to make a move, close enough in that purple machine to, I think, definitely show, Andrew, that purple is better than red.
I think we've firmly established at this point that purple is better than red if you're Josh Chin. The question is, will the strategy finally pay off? And I don't see it right now for Chin. He's going to have to find a way by Otis, I think, and really put some gap in between himself and Vigo if he's really going to make this work. Because I think he's really concentrated on Ryan Otis right now, but the driver he really should be worrying about is Vigo. As Chin goes around the outside, that's not really a passing zone in the GT3s, though.
Trying to compromise Otis, and you could tell, just feeling antsy. Looked out to the inside through Cops, and as the gap back to Vigo, now under 1.5 seconds, well and truly in that hole in the air. Joshua Chin feels the urge to push on forward, but not going to. Once again, up towards the top of Stowe. be able to look on forward. Chin is 11 laps into the fuel run. He is probably only a couple of laps away from having to come to the pit lane as well. That will add to the urgency to see him down on towards pit lane, with potentially already having gotten in front of Ryan Otis. We'll have to check in on that. We'll also have to check in with Austin Young. Technical issues have seen him drop off the timing screen, but still dropping down the order for now.
Yeah, I think Austin Young might have been completely dropped from the server at this point. So technical issues might just be putting paid to his recovery drive that he had going on here. I think he is going to be at least a few laps down if he is able to rejoin at all.
That is a shame. It was going so well. Had really made the most of the penalty, the end of line in a qualifying session. And now, almost a full lap without being scored on a timing beam, is down to 9th position, only in front of the now DNF'd Adam Blocker. You can see Miguel Vigo on the hunt, continuing to close. We'll continue to follow this battle without a shadow of a doubt, of course, as well. But it goes without saying, Sean Campbell has switched from an LMP3 to a GT3 machine and makes it look very simple. It's definitely not simple, Andrew, that is for sure.
No, it's not. The cars drive very differently and generate their grip very differently with the track. So the fact that he's been able to do what he's done here today is very, very impressive. And again, it's at this point, we're starting to run out of superlatives for just how good a driver Sean Campbell is in this series, aren't we?
We're getting used to it. It's becoming normal, which is abnormal. We've seen remarkable runs from Kraus, from Blocker in the Lionheart Open Wheel Series, but as Joshua Chin makes the duck to pit lane at the end of the 12th lap of fuel, it comes with 32 minutes to go. Chin will pack that car of fuel. There cannot be any risk of running out. Shortcuts, of course, the final couple of corners. Eyes will dart off to the right side, looking for the pit stall, for the lollipop man to bring him into the box. And Joshua Chin finds the mark and now settles in and lets the crew go to work.
And this is the key point for Josh Chin, is getting every ounce of fuel that he can in this car, but maximizing the pit in, pit out, and using the clean air here that he's hopefully going to come out into in order to try and get around Ryan Otis here.
Oh, it's only 17 seconds, so Chin might have still had enough fuel in that car to have done a bit of a short pit stop, and so it sets up, I think, an interesting sequence now. Chin once again finds himself in plenty of clean air. What's he going to do with all this time now?
It's just push, Arjun. He's got to go as quickly as he possibly can, get the tires fired up as quickly as he can, and just see what happens here, see if his strategy can work its way out. One good thing for Josh is that Miguel Vigo, in Chin's absence, is starting to put pressure on the back of Ryan Otis here. So if these two can get sort of mixed up and maybe harassing each other a little bit, costing each other time, that might be the opening that Chin needs in order to make his strategy work.
On board with that 66. The dance through the high-speed complex, wrapping out of Kops, back onto the power, and Vigo entrenched in the draft of that 95 now, and closing in on that rear bumper. Austin Young fans will be disappointed to hear that, yes, there were technical issues. Young is 2 laps off of the leader, but true endurance racing mindset, or true championship mindset in a 90-minute race, back out on track and trying to minimize the impact of an unfortunate technical issue. We'll keep you updated on where he cycles out. Andrew Wood, well, not one spill today, unfortunately. That was the aftermath of a second spill. This one up at Stowe, off camber on the very top of the corner, slides through the grass, and unfortunately, tires won't be happy with that.
Yeah, he was just never really in balance on the corner. Seemed to go in there maybe just a tad too slowly, and was off the gas, and the car just rotated around on him. A little bit of a strange spin there. I think is just maybe a little bit of inexperience with the GT3 cars for the debutante here. So I think chalk it up to a learning experience for Wood there.
Still has 30 minutes in this race and the pit stop to come. John Bader from Michael O'Brien finally going to battle around the outside. Will the 67 be able to swoop around Copt with traffic in front as well? Through Stowe, excuse me. There will go. Van der Zandt peels off to the pit lane. And O'Brien has to tuck back in as they cycle out past one of the graphics LC machines. Bader for now cycles up to third position. Alexander Van der Zandt will have 30 minutes of fuel to pack into that car. John Badefer has only just worked onto the 16th lap of a potential 22-lap fuel window, Andrew.
And miraculously for Badefer, this is basically for a podium position here, along with Van der Zandt, who's obviously in pit lane right now. But if Badefer, now that he's cleared O'Brien, can get some nice clean laps in, he might, shockingly enough, have a podium after all the adventures he's had in the race so far.
It's been a wild one, that is for sure. There is something in the Silverstone air. Alexander Van der Zandt joined by Bradley Sexton for the final pit stops in the LMDH class. Meanwhile, Chase Wilson's up to fourth, courtesy of Josh Chin's pit stop. Are we going to see Ryan Otis off to pit lane this time by? No. Otis only on the 11th lap of the run, to be fair. So could go as long as maybe 4 more laps before we see that car down to pit lane. And with 2-minute lap times for these GT3 drivers, Andrew, it's going to be another partial stop for them because there is no more than 14 or so laps for them to run.
Yeah, absolutely. So the question is, how much fuel do you need to put in? And I think that the answer is that Otis will be able to put in just enough to stay in front of Chin, but I think Vigo will have to put in so little fuel that he's going to get out in front of both of them. So my prediction for the cycle will be that it'll be Vigo, Otis, and then Chin.
See how it plays out. Under the bridge they go. Down the short, lost into the former final sector of the lap, or final corners of the lap. 3/10 between them. Vigo once again in that fuel-saving mindset. Josh Chin, last lap, actually lost some time to the two that he's chasing, but it was in the attempt to get past Tyler Graff, who slides the rear end around, coming out of the village section. Chin's up to 6th, and again, 17 seconds was the pit stop time there. It's the final pit stop also underway for Graham Sanders in the Hydro Race Geodesic number 100, and it's a 29.4 second pit stop there. And it's going to slide away and comfortably in front of the likes of Alexander Van der Zandt, Bradley Sexton, and Alex Guyon. Such is the margin that the front 2 or 3 drivers have been able to build up today.
Yeah, it's been dominating performances in both classes with Kraus and Campbell leading the way. And as you see, Sanders coming out still in 4th place. He's been doing a good job as well. But yeah, Kraus and Campbell just a league of their own today, Arjuna.
Definitely in that sort of domination mentality as well, to just make sure they don't put a foot wrong at any point. Let's check out what happened from up above. Through Maggots and Beckett's to Alexander Van der Zandt in the Power Slide Motorsports number 96. Trying to get past Sean Campbell, and the car pitches around on him before they jink back to the left to slide onto the hangar straight. I've got to say, well done to keep that under control.
Yeah, that would be a big moment in the cockpit for Alexander Van der Zandt, and this is one of those weird situations where sometimes when you're on new tires or a bigger fuel load, suddenly the car just responds differently than what you're used to, and I think that's what happened with Van der Zandt there, is he just wasn't expecting the car to do that, as we've got a little bit of pressure from Miguel Vigo on Ryan Otis, but Vigo once again has been sitting behind him and looks but doesn't try it.
There's been a lot of teasing today, a lot of look but don't send, and you've got to wonder if this is just the drivers respecting each other quite a lot. This late in the season, they've all driven against each other now. Let's not forget, 11 previous races. They know it's not going to be easy. They know they need to build up to get the move done eventually. And so maybe this is kind of what we're seeing as...
and I mean, this is also Miguel Vigo's MO, Arjuna, where he just will put all kinds of pressure on the car in front. If the car in front makes a mistake, fine. If not, Miguel Vigo just sits there and fuel saves.
The problem with that is that Josh Chin closed 0.8 of a second last lap. Sean Campbell's into pit lane this lap, which I think indicates to me that Otis might be in this time by. Miguel Vigo could go 2, maybe 3 laps longer before he's into the lane as well. Phil Kraus has come in from the LMDH points. It's getting busy for the crews, making sure no mistakes in the final trip to the lane.
And that definitely looks like Otis coming down pit lane, so Miguel Vigo does in fact go longer here. Otis will have to maximize this pit entry, but this will be really telling. Does he get out in front of Josh Chin in that number 73 private label team hype car?
Rounds the corner. Could there be a gamble in terms of tires as well? 8/10 last time for Joshua Chin. He's cresting up through Stowe now. You can see Ryan Otis making sure the car's pointed in the right direction to head out of the lane in a straight line. On the brakes through the left for Chin before he flicks it back right and gets onto the power to run it towards that turn number 1. Off the jacks for Otis with 15 seconds and counting. It was a 17-second stop for Chin. It's 19.5 for Otis.
Yeah, that was definitely longer than he was hoping for, and so Chin is going to, in fact, get around Otis comfortably here. That's not even going to be close to the stop that Otis was hoping for.
It's a 3-second gap as well now. And so for Miguel Vigo, it's got to be hope that you need 3 seconds less fuel than Joshua Chin to get to the end. But it also makes me a little concerned. Josh Chin came in very early. Has he maybe put too little fuel in compared to what Ryan Otis just put?
That's exactly what I was wondering, Arjuna, because it doesn't add up that that Otis would have to take a longer pit stop there than Chin. So unless the only two possibilities for me are either Otis overfilled or Chin underfilled, and it depends who you're rooting for, which one you think has happened at this point.
I still think that Chin probably came in with fuel in the tank still, so maybe there was just more of a top-off effect for Chin compared to Ryan Otis, who came in actually being completely out of fuel. Here's Phil Kraus, who is out of pit lane. Yes, with John Bader yet to make the final stop and due in a handful of laps' time. But with a 19-second gap back to Graham Sanders, and in fact, Bader on cue, back down to the lane. And Phil Kraus has 22 minutes to hold on to the lead here, and potentially 22 minutes before he'll retake the championship lead.
Yeah, but it was going to be a much more comfortable retake of the lead for Kraus up until Bader suddenly found himself potentially in a podium position here. We'll have to see just where he comes out vis-a-vis Michael O'Brien, but that moment from Van de Sande has made it easier on Bader here.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. Now, all of these LMDHs, because they have been stopping for tires, do end up staying stationary for upwards of 25 odd seconds, and so Bader for 20 seconds and counting, maybe only a handful of seconds before that car will be released. There's O'Brien in the graphics LC machine. Bader for 25.8, already off the limiter. He's going to comfortably hold third position, and with potentially 2-lap pressure tires, yes, Michael O'Brien will close as Bader brings the Michelin tires back into the window, but a damage limitation for sure. Put it on pole, made the mistake, slid back to 4th, then got a drive-through penalty, had a bit of a long first stop. It's been an eventful one for Bader, and indeed for the entire Hydra Race Geodesic Racing crew.
Yeah, this race has certainly not been a snoozer for any of the Hydra Race Geodesic Racing drivers, and certainly any of the drivers from the cockpit perspective. There might have been some lulls in the action from the broadcast perspective, but for these drivers on course, it's been non-stop action all race long.
Of course, Indianapolis is up next. This place has seen some Lionheart history. Boy, has Indianapolis. Walk through the streets of Indy and you'll probably hear them talking, but never has it seen a race like this, Andrew. Never will it see, I think, the intensity through the final sector that we're going to be in for, because, of course, Indianapolis's road course was initially built for Formula One. I think it's fair to say no one liked the original layout. So we've got a new one now. It's a lot more difficult, I feel, for the faster class to get through the slower class with where we're going in that final sector now.
Well, not only that, but I think no other road course really invites the full send like the Indianapolis road course does, Arjuna. just one of those things with the long straightaways and the hard braking zones at the end that it just tempts so many drivers to do that full send, and more often than not, or more often than it should, I suppose, it ends in tears.
Don't know what you're talking about. Turn 1's totally not dive central. No chance.
And we definitely didn't see a 4 or 5 car wide move from Devlin DeFrancesco in the real world this year.
I wasn't
wasn't
thinking about that either. Never happened. Chase Wilson came in at the end of his 16th lap. End of his 17th lap. And runs himself back out in a top 5 position. This is another great day on points for him. He's only about 19 seconds off of Ryan Otis. The pace definitely continues to be quite consistent. Next best AM might just be Chris Staples, who is in 8th position right now, heading out of the pit stops, and in front now of Trevor Malone by 15 full seconds. So not just Wilson, top 10 in the AM class today here, Andrew. You've got Staples, Malone, Reagan as well. Some decent points for all the AMs.
Yeah, the AM drivers are definitely starting to pick up their game just a little bit, and they're starting to find their legs and find the pace in these cars. So it's a good thing to see these drivers sort of developing in that AM class, and I certainly expect Chase Wilson, but drivers like Staples as well, potentially moving up to that pro class next year as well.
Again, just a reminder, iRacing making some changes to the paint system here. For these GT3s, that's why a couple of these cars look a bit different than the last time you saw them racing. Here is the crucial pit stop, though. Miguel Vigo knows the number. 17 seconds for Joshua Chin. If Miguel Vigo can be 14 seconds or quicker, we think there's a big chance he comes out in net second spot. Josh Chin's wrapping out of the final corner. Vigo,
it's 14 seconds,
13.9. Oh, it's going to be close, Andrew.
Going to be very close. Chin is coming down the front straightaway right now, but I think Miguel Vigo has it. The question is, can he fire up those tires quickly enough? And does he have enough life left in those tires? Because he definitely did not take any tires on that pit stop.
And that's going to be the gamble as well, right? Is the fact that no tires, we think, for Vigo. What life is there in the rubber underneath them right now? Weather conditions have not really changed. An hour on from the last time we really looked at them, still 37 degrees Celsius on the track itself, same 10-kilometer-hour gusts of wind, same cloud cover that we've seen for the most part, and indeed the BRDC clubhouse that we see now would have had a good look at. I feel like, Andrew, 37 sounds quite warm for track temperatures. Miguel Vigo wouldn't have gone for it if he didn't feel comfortable that 17 minutes would be enough.
Well, I mean, he had basically committed to that strategy early on, when he went that long on that first stint. So I think he sort of was at peace with it, whatever happened there. He probably did take care of his tires to a certain extent on that second stint as well, knowing that he would have to go 2 stints on them. So, yeah, I think that he's probably fairly confident at this point, but this is probably also the first time that he's really got to see Josh Chin stretch his legs as well, because Chin has been behind Ryan Otis for the vast majority of this race. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what happens here and whether Chin is able to close up on the back of that 66 car.
It's one of the unfortunate realities of having a time-limited race where we know we're going to have multiple pit stops. Fuel saving comes into play because the easiest way to save time when you're in a field that can be as competitive as this is to spend as little time in the pit lane as possible. And once again, we are seeing that borne out in the course of the race so far. It's 1.8, that's going to split second and third at the line. In fact, 1.9, Josh Chin losing out slightly to Vigo through that final sector as traffic just showed its nose in the mirrors and maybe put a bit of pressure onto Florida's own. 4.3 back from the 73 to Ryan Otis, and I think that's going to be a bit of a trend to continue to follow, even though we're going to Indianapolis next. The Nürburgring after that, Imola, Suzuka. These are all tracks, Andrew, where leading a bit of a choo-choo train and being the one to punch the hole in the air will be a disadvantage.
Yeah, it absolutely will. So it's been very interesting to watch how the personalities that have developed in this GT3 field, because we almost have set persons leading for the majority of the race, and then other drivers cycling to the front on a race-by-race basis, with Otis typically leading early on the choo-choo train, and then Chin or Vigo, or sometimes both, in this case both, making their way around through that strategy call. So it's the different personalities of the drivers really coming to the fore, and using their own techniques and their own mentalities to their advantage.
The disappointing thing this season has been Josh Chin is usually not at the front of the train, so you know what we can't call it?
Don't say it.
Hype train!
Oh.
It was just sitting there. It was waiting for me to swim to it. Joey Tebbin somewhere in RaceSpotTV land is so proud of that pun. But Andrew is very appalled, and rightly so. Back over to Michael O'Brien and John Bader for this is a fight for a podium spot. Not somewhere where traditionally we've seen Michael O'Brien this season. We know just how quick the driver can be in a Lotus 79. So many pole positions, handful of victories to go with it as well. But now with Bader in the clutches, is this the Kiwis' time to shine?
It certainly is looking like O'Brien has been able to stay with Beta really well here, and traffic is not helping Beta right now. So now down to just half a second here going through Maggots and Beckett's. If O'Brien can stay in Beta's wheel tracks for the rest of this stint, he's definitely looking positive to fight for that podium spot.
Where is the traffic potentially going to play its part? You can see on that track map in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen as these drivers head down to the very bottom corner and to the start-finish line. They've got the 98 of Tyler Graf and the GT3s up next. Then a bit of separation up to Andrew Marquez. Bit more gap then up towards what will be Chase Wilson, Ryan Otis, and Josh Chin. So there's not much traffic that these drivers are really going to have to deal with in terms of swarms. But maybe O'Brien will find an opportunity, if he can find Beta for napping at any point. There is not just one Hydra Race driver under pressure, of course, geodesic driver under pressure. Josh Chin pushes wide out of turn number one. Gap still holding pretty close at 2 seconds between second and third position. And Phil Kraus gets ready to send his way past the private label Team Hype teammate. This is where that team game comes into play. Kraus would have been a bit more aggressive at the start of the race to get past earlier through that complex. This time, with the gap that he's got, could wait and avoid costing Chin any time.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think it was also just, it was less dangerous for Kraus as well. There's no need for Kraus to take any risks whatsoever at this point in the race. He's got the race basically in hand. All he has to do is complete these final 12 minutes. And he's got this 20-second gargantuan lead over Sanders. So if I'm Kraus, it doesn't matter if I'm a teammate, or if it's a teammate or not. I'm not taking the risks around Maggots and Beckett's if I don't have to.
That's a policy that I think definitely is for the West. If you're willing to adopt it, Beta and O'Brien are gonna get on past. I think that's Andrew Marquez in that 63. So next up is going to be Chase Wilson. It's only, 4 car lengths between the two in the entry in towards the Vale. Wrapping around the left before you flick to the right, and O'Brien clatters over the curb. That's going to cost him a bit of speed. Gap builds, now over 1.2 seconds. All it takes is one mistake. O'Brien has all that work to do once more.
It really is down to just small mistakes at this point for both of these drivers, and you have to say that Beta has made a fair number of mistakes today, but at the same time, over the last half hour or so, he's really gathered himself up well, and has had a nice recovery drive. So sometimes when you're the chasing driver like O'Brien is, you end up pushing just a little bit too hard, and I think that's what we saw there from O'Brien.
So we'll have 10.5 minutes to go as Paul going the long way around on the number 13 of Chase Wilson. Goes Beta for 67, just digs into the runoff available on the outside. It's one of the benefits of this newer version of Silverstone. Some of the runoff has been extended. That's that blend of new with the old that Andrew was talking about slightly earlier. How many laps do we have left, though, with our 10 minutes? Well, as Phil Kraus heads towards the line, lap times here are about 1 minute 43 seconds. 6-7 laps to go, Andrew, I guess.
Yep, I think we probably have 7 total for the LMDHs for Phil Kraus, if I'm counting correctly. Don't trust a commentator's math. But yeah, it's just been a nicely dominant performance there for Kraus and your LMDH leader. And then the question is, can Chin do anything with Miguel Vigo in these final 10 minutes? He's definitely been closing in just a hair lap after lap, but I don't think he's really made enough of a difference to get within that drafting range. And of course, we've talked about this a number of times. The GT3 cars just don't have that powerful of a draft anymore.
For the time being, it's still, I think, a little bit larger than Josh Chin would like, but rolling up towards Brooklands once again. Dive it deep into the corner and then run through Luffield as tight through the corner as you can. Some try and V it out a little bit more. You see Josh Chin in the bottom corner of your screen, just maybe a little bit wider, but shortest distance tends to be the fastest line through the corner. Shortcut your way through the old start-finish line on the maybe bravest corner on the track, in my opinion. Not because it's got much difficulty, but because you're so scared about the runoff on that left-hand side. Haven't been too worried about track limit today, but with 8 minutes to go, incident points will start to add up, and now just trust the car's grip, the mechanical grip underneath you, through Maggots, now through Beckett's, and then out of Chapel at the very end to bring yourself through the hangar straight and back up towards Stowe. Nice tidy sequence there from Josh Chin. Gap holds at 1.6 seconds for the time being, though, and you can see that behind them, a little bit closer between John Badefer and Michael O'Brien, who's done the hard work once again and closed to third